back in the same cave from where the young orphan was last seen with Set. We now see a throne present, deep within the cave as a figure sits on it. Set was there, drinking a cup of wine. He talked about how it wasn't enough as a crow was present on the table beside him. He was thinking about how the human supply wasn't enough, making him question if he should foster humans like animals, turning them into livestock and creating an organization. This was no longer Set of the Baskerville clan, but instead was Andromalius, the 10th corpse who belonged to the demon's 10 elite corpses. Looking at the crow with multiple yellow-red eyes on the table beside him, he asks about what it thinks and calls the crow as 8. It turns out that the small crow, with its creepy eyes, was actually the 8th demon of the demon's 10 elite corpses. He tells Andromalius that he was against his idea, as he knew that if things escalate, then the possibility of humans learning about their existence will increase. The 8th demon could also see that Andromalius had only been eating children, so he warns him to be careful not to give off any scent since the Baskerville's hounds have a good sense of smell. It turns out that Andromalius had been eating a huge amount of children as tiny skulls and skeletons surrounded them in the cave. After hearing the 8th demon reply, Andromalius didn't like the nagging but assured him to not worry about that since he had casted a trap, so that they couldn't enter the cave. Andromalius then informs the 8th demon that at their current rate, in order to gather enough magic power to open the gate, he would need to suck human blood for 12.5 more years. Hearing the complaint, the 8th demon warns Andromalius not to stir up something that was worth noticing among the human beings. The 8th demon questions him on whether there was anything else going on within the Baskerville clan. Andromalius paused for a moment before reporting with a no. He told the 8th demon that he was going fine and that he just needed to do the same with the Morgue clan. Hearing that there was nothing new, the 8th demon reminded Andromalius that as the 10 elite corpses, they just needed to focus on opening the gates that would lead to downfall. Since they were the links between the human and demonic realms after all. Before dissolving into a black liquid, the 8th demon left Andromalius with these last words: "All of this is for the downfall of humans and the 10 elite corpses." Looking at the black liquid left behind, Andromalius took another sip of his drink made from human blood, revealing the fact that he couldn't report that Hugo had become an idiot for his granddaughter. And that in order for the demons to weaken the Baskervilles, who will pose a threat to their plans, they needed Hugo to maintain his coldness, ice in his veins style. Andromalius needed Hugo to keep treating the young Baskervilles as perishables, so it won't cause a fuss when he takes them. As he got up from his throne, he thought about how it wouldn't mess with the plan, but he wasn't sure if things will turn out well now. Andromalius knew that all the blame lay with a certain bastard, Vikir van Baskerville. The man, the myth, the legend. Andromalius recalled how that annoying guy survived when the venomous snake was released when he was younger. He even thought about how great it was when he died in the forest, but instead, Vikir had returned with Hugo's granddaughter. Biting his thumb, Andromalius became annoyed over how much work he did before in order to destroy Hugo. Letting his emotions run wild, Andromalius decided from this moment on, that it was going to be good for him to get rid of the problem. We now change scenes to see that Hugo and Vikir were walking together side by side through a hallway. As they continued to walk together, Vikir started to think silently to himself. Taking a peek at Hugo, he recalled that he had summoned Vikir and that they've been walking in silence for the past 5 minutes, which prompts the questions: why did Hugo suddenly summon him? Looking at Hugo's current state, Vikir could spot that he was full of openings and that this was a chance that won't happen again. Now was the perfect chance to kill Hugo. But Vikir closes his eyes instead, because if it was the past him, then those would have been his thoughts, but the him right now is different. Hugo then spoke out loud, telling Vikir that honestly, he knew that he hated him, which surprised our boy. Vikir immediately thought that Hugo had sensed his murderous intent. But then, Hugo explained that he was a father that referred to his sons as bloodhounds and had placed them all into dangerous situations. Which made him think that his sons had always despised him. He also mentions the fact that he had been cruel to Vikir since he was young even though he did everything well, so he started to think that his hatred towards him was something he needed to bear as a father. Hugo continues to explain that all of this was due to his vengeance towards the barbarians. It was his carelessness to only know how to live by displaying hatred and anger all the time. Vikir continues to be shocked by what was going on. He knew that there was no way Hugo would talk badly about himself, and yet, here he was, confessing everything he felt, as though he was testing Vikir. "I'm sorry," said Hugo, to Vikir, whose eyes immediately lit up upon hearing those words from this man. With his head lowered and facing Vikir, Hugo tells him thank you so much. Hugo reveals that he had heard from Pomerian that his precious Penelope was happy till the end. Knowing that his precious daughter was happy during her final moments, Hugo's heavy heart was lifted a little. He felt like he had been saved as an image of his happy family crossed his mind. So Hugo bows to Vikir. For the first time in history, he thanks the boy for bringing Pomerian to him and wanted to give him anything he wanted in exchange. He wanted the reward not to be a bloodhound's reward but a gift of thanks. But as he mentions those words, Vikir's expression was dark. He started to think about how he had a vague suspicion ever since he regressed. He recalls the past memory from when he was younger and when Hugo encouraged him to do well in the interim evaluation, and how during the exam he had ordered for a stop just in case it was dangerous for Vikir. Even after receiving a wound, Hugo showed concern by telling Vikir to treat the injury as a lesson. Even now, he would call Vikir son, and believed in him. So the question, is the Hugo in front of me different from the Hugo I know? Popped into Vikir's mind as he figures out that the cold Hugo may not even exist anymore. Which was a strange thing that happened after he had regressed. But because of that, our boy was confused about his life. For the past 17 years, he had only thought about revenge, but now, he was able to forgive Hugo. The person who framed him might not have been Hugo, but the person who ordered his execution and didn't trust in him was definitely Hugo. Revenge and forgiveness, between these two choices, which one does Vikir choose, as he stares at the current Hugo? Before deciding on that, Vikir needed to do something else first, so he told the patriarch to lift his head. So he asks about what Hugo said about his reward being anything he wanted. Hugo looks up, and confirms it to be true. And so, Vikir decides on his reward, believing that after that, he would decide on what to do with Hugo. We now turn to the demon, tying Pomerian's hair in the courtyard. Andromalius asks her if it was great to be in the Baskerville clan. Pomeranian happily tells him that since Uncle Vikir was here along with Grandpapa Hugo and Uncle Osiris. But then Andromalius asks her why she didn't mention his name and wanted to know if she knew his name, which made her think for a while. After a brief moment, Pomerian calls him Uncle Set. A servant appears behind them, reminding Set that he hasn't started his isolated training. He turns to the servant, explaining that he wanted to see his niece before he started. But the servant reminded him that the patriarch had ordered for no one to approach Pomerian. But Set ignored those orders, saying that he knew about it but wanted it to be a secret between him and Pomerian, who happily agreed to keep it as a secret between them. As he continued to touch Pomerian's hair, Set couldn't help but comment about how nice it was. He recalls how it reminds him of Sister Penelope, but this comment catches the attention of the servant. As she questions Set on how it was possible for him to meet Miss Penelope before, as she was sure that he wasn't even born back then. Her questions cause Set to stir for a moment. Realizing that he had made a mistake, Set reveals his true form as Andromalius, causing the back of his head to reveal the demonic side of him while he tells the nanny that his father was looking for her. The nanny could only stand in fear as her eyes began to tear up from facing the powerful demon. As she let out a shriek, Pomerian started to turn around as she heard it. But then she notices that the granny is gone. Andromalius was busy eating the nanny as Set explains to Pomerian that she had something urgent to do. He then asks Pomerian about whether she likes Grandpapa Hugo, to which she happily says yes. Set also knew that Hugo likes Pomerian very much, as he recalls with a sinister look on his face about how Pomerian truly looks like Hugo's dead wife and daughter. With his hands stretched out this time, forming a mouth with multiple sharp teeth in between, he reaches out to our sweet little angel. Wondering how much it would destroy Hugo, if he was to kill Pomerian right here and now. But before he could take a bite out of Pomerian, a voice calls out to Set. It was Osiris. Appearing at the right time, he questions Set about the whereabouts of the nanny and why he was here. Set was annoyed and quickly hid his demonic form. As Pomerian excitedly greets Osiris, Set explains that the nanny wasn't here when he came, so he decided to look after Pomerian, who was alone. Accepting his explanation, Osiris warns Set that Hugo will be enraged if he knew about this and that it would be best for them to keep this as a secret from him. He continues to tell him that he should head back to isolation training now. Set replies back with a smile on his face that he would start it again next week, but in his thoughts, he swears that one day, he was going to kill Osiris. Osiris stares at him for a while before placing his hand onto Set's arm, revealing that he was worried about the fact that he was pushing himself too much. And informs Set that if he needed help, he could come and find him anytime. But Set's attention was drawn towards Osiris's hand, which was on his arm. his face was instantly filled with annoyance about how Osiris mentioned that he was worried about him. He recalled that it was because of him, that he was being pressured by their father, Hugo, and that it was because he was being compared to Osiris, who was a genius. Set knew that if he didn't exist, then life would have been much kinder to him. Being immersed in his sadness, Osiris calls out to Set, which brings him back to reality. Andromalius started to panic as he hid his face with his hand. He immediately turned around to leave, stating that since Osiris was here now, he should go. But the truth was that he had mixed up his own memories with Set's remaining ones. Osiris could only stare at his younger brother as he left, before letting out a deep breath which caught Pomerian's attention. He reveals to her that this was the first time that he had told Set about how worried he was about him. As the vice-patriarch, it was a given that Osiris had to be like Hugo. A cold-blooded man. That was how he was taught, so he grew up staring at his cold-hearted father's back. But then something happened for the first time in his life. He saw that his father was able to express his emotions. Which begs the question in Osiris's mind, will he be able to live expressing these same awkward emotions that exist within himself? As he touches Pomerian's head, he thanks her. Because all these changes happened because she came back to the Baskerville clan. Back at the cave hideout, Set was stomping his foot on the ground rapidly. He bites his thumb once again, commenting out loud about how something was so annoying. After that day, meeting with Pomerian and Osiris, Hugo hasn't left her side at all. Because of how he was being smitten by his granddaughter, he couldn't kill Pomerian. His demonic side started to appear in his eyes, frustrated over the fact that he missed his chance because of Osiris' sudden appearance. With a quick snap of his neck, Andromalius regained his composure. He knew that there was still a lot of time before the gate opened, so there was no need to rush. So it might be more effective for him to kill Pomerian when she becomes even more valuable to Hugo. When that time came, Andromalius wondered how he was going to kill Pomerian. He wonders if he should poison her like she did with Hugo's wife Roxana, and make it look like she died from an illness, or should he use the barbarians like before like he did with Penelope? His demonic side was coming out, as he smiled sinisterly, knowing that he was going to kill Pomerian in a more harsher way than those two previously. But as he was immersed in his thoughts, a familiar figure stood in front of the cave entrance with his trusty sword summoned. Vikir has arrived, and with his bloodhound eyes filled with bloodlust, he takes a massive swing with Beelzebub, destroying the barrier that was protecting the cave's entrance and catching Set's attention as he felt it shatter. Set immediately stood up from his throne, grabbing his sword. He looked at the direction of the cave entrance, realizing that there was a crack in the trap. He couldn't believe that someone had actually come inside through the crack, making him wonder who it was exactly. And so, from out of the darkness of the night, Vikir makes his appearance. He shows up, reminding Set that as promised, he was here to visit him. Set was stunned to see Vikir being here, wondering how it was possible. Vikir reveals to him that he had followed him all the way here, but he didn't notice him at all because he was lost in thought. He said this while using his second slot skill, called Silent Heal, given by the ugly fish monster. Set was taken aback. He couldn't believe that a mere mid-grade graduator made a crack in his trap. But what was more important to him was, since Vikir had followed him, does it mean that he knew his true identity? As he scans the cave and spots the numerous skeletons scattered around, Vikir figures that his sudden visit must have caused Set many troubles, which made him question what he was doing in such a chaotic place like this. Vikir even tells Set that it looks like he was the demon behind the missing children's case in Underdog City. This statement made Set go from a dark expression to a creepy smile on his face. He reveals his demonic aura to Vikir, figuring out that he already knew everything, but he was curious about how Vikir figured it out. Matching the demonic aura with his own bloodhound aura, Vikir tells the demon, with his own version of a sinister smile, that it didn't seem like he plans to hide himself anymore. Set begins to walk up to Vikir, holding on his sword. He tells Vikir that there was no need to hide since there wasn't anyone else here either. Set wasn't sure where Vikir had gotten his confidence from to come here alone and empty-handed, but Set figured out that everything would be fine if he just killed Vikir. And so, the mad demon takes a swing at our boy with his demonic aura and sword. His attack seems to work as he manages to do a full swing towards Vikir, bringing a smile to the demon's face. Our boy's eyes were lifeless after the attack. But then something else happens. The sword Andromalius was using had landed far away from his body, while Vikir was still perfectly fine enough to ask him about why he was laughing. It turns out that the demon's arm had been sliced off so fast and in such a strong manner, that the attack was enough to cut even the Manhwa's panel in half. Andromalius immediately kneels down in pain while screaming as Vikir shows off Beelzebub. In that single moment, he had summoned his own blade and sliced off Andromalius's arm. The demon could only wonder why Vikir had taken out a weapon, and that the pain it was feeling felt as though his soul had been cut, which made him realize what weapon Vikir was using. Andromalius figures out that it was Beelzebub, the sword of gluttony. He shouts at Vikir, asking him about how he could have obtained the relic of the Grand King of Flies, the holy constellation of the ancient devil. Vikir expected such knowledge from the demons as they truly know a lot when it comes to themselves, but as he calls out to Set, he reveals the true face of the man before him. Vikir knew that Andromalius was one of the 10 demons who came to the human world in order to open the gate to the demon world, a member of the 10 elite corpses. Hearing this, Andromalius could only shout in shock over how Vikir knew about such information. But as he continues to stare at Vikir with his demonic eyes, he realizes something else. The soul of Vikir. Andromalius could only wonder why his young soul smelled like the blood of their people, making him think that Vikir had gone to hell before. With his bloodhound eyes all lit up, Vikir could see that the being in front of him was the one who framed him in his previous life. As if following him into thinking he was his savior wasn't enough. Set was also the one who executed Vikir in the end too. "Wake up, demon," said Vikir in a heavy tone, causing Andromalius to sweat profusely. As if Vikir had become a demon as well, our boy tells the demon with a big smile on his face, to never think that he was going to die comfortably.
Thanks for watching the latest part from the voice of Manhwa. Subscribe for more content and don't forget to comment below what you want to see in the future. Like and share for more.